Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I am a super fan of my Baby Lock serger. It can do so many awesome things and be such a great complement to your sewing machine, and so I'm going to show you why. So let me show you some of my favorite fabrics that work awesome on the serger. If you sew garments, you might be familiar with fabrics that fray like crazy. And a serger can handle it so well. So we're going to do a 4-thread overlock. And you can see that my thread is just fraying. And I can serge it, and you can see it took all of those frays off. It cut the edge of the fabric nice and straight, and we get a very pretty professional stitch there. And then when you open it up, you have a seam. So it handles nice thin fabrics really well, and then we can move to maybe a little bit more of a medium weight that has a texture to it, and it'll handle it just as well. Look how pretty and professional and quick that is. And you have your seam there, your nice seam. So it sews it and it serges it to finish off the edge all at the same time. So that was a little bit of a medium weight fabric. Let's move to a denim. So I'm going to fold this over. It's going to stitch through 2 layers of denim. You can see I didn't even have to raise the foot, so it helps with efficiency. And then I'm going to fold this over and we'll get 4 layers of denim. And I didn't have to change anything on my serger. I didn't have to adjust tensions or anything. It went from my thin fabric to my medium weight to my thick fabric to 4 layers of denim with ease. If you've ever tried to sew with a fabric like this, it's plush, it's kind of like a minky, you know it likes to move all over the place on a sewing machine, but a serger can handle it with ease. So I'm going to place pretty sides together. You can see there's a little bit of a stretch in there even. Place it under the serger. I'm gonna lift the foot up, get that under my blade. And look how easily it pulled that fabric through. You don't have any stitches laying off the edge of the fabric. You can still stretch it, which is really awesome. And then of course you can get your seam there. So it's really nice and strong and still allows you to stretch without popping your stitches. So this is a very common fabric used for baby blankets, and it's very similar to Minky. It has an embossed heart on it, so you'll find different fabrics like that. And the serger handles it so easily, so I'm going to place these opposite of each other. It would move so much on your sewing machine. And you can see it just pulled the 2 fabrics together nice and evenly. One did not shift compared to the other one. So you can have fun with that. Okay, so now this is fabric to fabric, the same type of fabric. What if we did something a little bit different with a cotton fabric? Oftentimes people don't think of gathering with a serger, but it's really cool because you can gather it, finish the edges at the same time. If you've ever basted and gathered, when you gather, you know that the edges tend to fray a lot. So that's really the benefit of the serger, is it'll finish the edge at the same time. So I'm just going to adjust a couple of things here. And we can see how easily the serger will gather up our fabric. Okay, so you can see that it put a bunch of little tucks in there to create a gather. So we can pull 2 of the threads and you can gather it up a little bit more, because I don't know about you, but I love denser gathers. It's just cute. Okay, now if we wanted to insert this gather into a pillow or stitch a blanket, if you gathered both sides of it, you could stitch it into a blanket. And the serger, again, can handle it with ease. we're just going to take our gathered piece and we're going to line it up with our snuggle fabric. So I'm just going to make a few adjustments again. We're going to line up a fabric that tends to move a lot, as well as gathers that tend to shift a lot. So there you can see two different types of fabrics with textures that would move a lot on your sewing machine that stitch together perfectly with the serger. So this fabric is like a jersey knit. And then we have a rib knit here, which you might find once we stitch it together is going to look like the neckline of a t-shirt. And if you tried to do that on the sewing machine, it would be a little bit difficult because you're trying to stretch one layer to fit the neckline of the other piece of fabric. And let's line those up and you can see how quickly and professionally we can make this look. All right, so we just fit a straight rib knit piece of fabric to a curve on a jersey knit, and you'll notice that that looks like the neckline of a shirt. And see how easily I was able to stitch that, and you're able to still stretch it, no stitches popping. So if you're somebody that loves sewing with activewear, maybe you're making a swimsuit or a pair of leggings to work out in, you will love stitching this type of fabric with a serger, okay? So I'm going to mimic stitching elastic like you would be stitching it for a waistband with the 4-thread overlock. All right, so we've just serged the elastic to the top of this Lycra type fabric. Okay, you can see we get great stretch there still, but it's so fast and efficient, it cuts your time in half and you still get that stretch. So then what you would do is you would take this over to your sewing machine and you would either use a double needle or a zigzag stitch so that you still get that stretch. There's a lot of things that you would use a 4-thread overlock stitch for, but the 3-thread overlock stitch comes in handy for a lot of other projects. Let's say you want to stitch some leggings and you want a little bit more stretch and a less bulky seam. This stitch works perfectly for that. So I have like a fleece line knit fabric that you might use for fleece line leggings. And we've set up for a 3-thread overlock. Place that under the foot. This fabric, again, is one of those that likes to move a lot on you, so the serger handles it great. So you can see it looks very nice and professional, and the 3-thread stitch allows for a little bit more stretch, and you won't hear any of those stitches popping. It just looks really pretty and it's less bulky, which is great for leggings, right? If you're working with something like home decor or perhaps a wool type fabric for a jacket, you may not want the bulk of a seam. But let's say your fabric is going to fray like crazy without some type of finish. That's another reason the serger comes in handy. So you can just finish the edges of your fabric. So I'm going to take one layer and run it through. And then I would run my second piece through. Okay, so you can see that I just stitched along the edge of one and then my second piece of fabric. Okay, and then what I would do is I would take this to the sewing machine and create a seam. So let me show you what that would look like. So you would press it open. I did a 4-thread, so you could do 3-thread or 4-thread with this seam. And then once you take it to your sewing machine to sew that stitch, you can have a very nice flat, so not bulky, seam with finished edges. It looks very professional. You may be familiar with activewear that inserts this netting along with the stretchy fabric. So I'm going to place 2 of these together, and I'm going to use the 3-thread overlock again. And this stitch is so perfect for this because it's going to allow for that stretch, less bulk, and it kind of blends in because I'm going to use thread that's the same color as the fabric. So I used 3 threads. It's a very narrow stitch. You might not even be able to see it. We still have the stretch that we need. And then when you open it up, you have a very small seam allowance that's less noticeable. And it hides really well when you use the same color thread. I've switched to a narrow 3-thread rolled hem, and this is an awesome stitch to hem things, to create like a very skinny seam for something like chiffon. So let me show you that one. So if you want a seam to be very hidden, you can go with this stitch because it's very narrow and it hides really well, especially if you use the same color thread. So let's say you're stitching a dress where you use chiffon fabric or a similar fabric, okay? And you can see that that seam is really small. It also rolls the fabric, so it's going to hold that stitch really well so that your fabric isn't going to pull out of the seam, okay? And then when you open this up, you can barely see that seam because we're using, you know, kind of a sheer fabric. You want that seam to hide really well. So this stitch works great for that, but you can also hem fabrics like this really easily, especially again if you're using the same color thread. So I have a white thread here just so you can kind of see it a little bit better, but if I had a light green thread to go with this fabric, it would blend so well. So not only did I seam this fabric with this stitch, you can also hem it, and it's not very noticeable, especially if you're going to use the same thread color as whatever you're making. So just like with the sheer fabric, you can hem satiny type fabrics as well. I've hemmed a lot of dresses with this stitch because it looks so pretty and professional, and it's also really quick, and it helps hold the fabric in place. So again, you would use a thread color that matches, but look how pretty that looks. Very professional, very fast, and it trims it off for you as well. So here I have a tulle fabric, and we can add a rolled hem to this so that it really stands out. So whether you're making a veil or perhaps a flower girl dress where it's a little bit more poofy and you would like that hem to stand out, for this we're going to use white thread, but if you used a fun color thread, that would be fun for a dress. So I'm just going to use the 3-thread narrow rolled hem on the edge of this tulle fabric. All right, so you can see that stitch really helps the edge of the fabric stand out really well. So as you can see, there is so much you can do with the serger, and it is the perfect addition to your sewing room because this was just the tip of the iceberg. You can do so much more. Thanks so much for watching. Check out babylock.com for more inspiration and tips.